Who am I? And what is my purpose? All the characters in the Avatar: Last Airbender series struggle to answer this question. Despite this, they all grow to be happy with who they are. The ensemble cast of characters all have conflicting ideologies. They all view the world in a different lens. No one is 100% right, and no one is 100% wrong. They're all still young teens trying to find their way in the world. The show does bring some attention to these elements, but the fine details and implications are never really put into focus, as opposed to The Legend of Korra where these are made central themes. The Last Airbender still has it, but it's far more subtle in its approach. Thus, Avatar: The Last Airbender, the subtlety of moral ambiguity. Katara rides a fine line between being nice and being too nice. Katara is aware of this. She's able to recognize that sometimes compromise has to be made for the greater good. In The Painted Lady, she halts the group's progress because she insisted on helping the civilians. This, in and of itself, isn't a bad thing. In fact, it's a good thing. However, the group understandably had a lot more important things to worry about. So the group wanting to progress is simply a rational decision. However, Katara was an idealist. She's overly motherly and protective, to the point where she can't bear to see someone in help and have her not save them. The Runaway is an episode where we see Katara open up a little bit more, portraying the wild side she's been developing with Toph, going against the rules, being less motherly and more unruly. In The Puppet Master, she recognizes the power of bloodbending but chooses to ignore it for moral reasons. As seen through Hana, bloodbending is spawned through hatred and revenge, taking full control of your opponent. When Katara finally uses it, she breaks down in tears. She was forced to go against her moral code and felt horrible for doing so. These episodes serve to fully accentuate her soft side while subtly foreshadowing and slowly building up to her climax in the Southern Raiders. When we get to the Southern Raiders, Katara is confronted with the supposed man who killed her mother, and as a result, she bloodbends, going completely against the moral code she established in the Puppet Masters. The group warns Katara that she shouldn't be seeking revenge and that would make her no better than Jet. Katara replies by saying Jet was evil and sets her actions apart from his by implying that her actions are for a noble cause as opposed to Jet. But in reality, they really have the same motivations. Jet did everything he did because the Fire Nation killed his parents. Katara is doing what she's doing because the man killed her mother. There is no difference. In this scene, Katara is just as bad as the man she criticized. Jet was willing to wipe out an entire village in hopes of getting a lead on the Fire Nation. Katara literally wipes out a mass of Fire Nation soldiers in hopes of getting a lead on the man who killed her mother. Katara never forgave the man, but in the end, she was able to show mercy, something Jet never learned to do. Throughout the show, Katara is shown performing incredible acts of kindness, but now she is fueled by raw hatred, unmatched by almost anyone in the show. Katara's character arc showcases the twisted, hypocritical, overly emotional side of motherly love. Love is important, but so is forgiveness. Kindness is good, but not at the expense of reason.
Well, what was I supposed to do?
Leave! Do nothing!
No! I will never ever turn my back on people who need me.
When Zuko first tries to join the group, she is the first one who is truly able to see the good in him. She's able to look past appearances and look directly into one's true self. Through her blindness, she has better vision than anyone else in the series. In her times with the Aang gang, she becomes the most rebellious thug among the whole group, the direct antithesis of Katara's motherly self. She believes that everyone should be independent, carrying their own weight, as she would say. She carries intense resentment to being controlled, but slowly warms up to it in her time with Katara. This is seen most vividly when she is alone and encounters Iroh. Iroh shows her that the group doesn't actually view her as weak and insignificant. She got angry at her friends because she thought they thought she was weak, but in fact, they really only just cared for her. Despite the subtle development we see on Toph's part, she's still rather indifferent to most people. She lacks the strong emotional attachment to family that Katara has. She doesn't have an entire culture to uphold like Aang. She doesn't have a love interest like Sokka. She only really has herself to care for. That, in combination with her intense resentment to be controlled, all culminates to the young lady we see today. A woman who is so indifferent. Someone who believes everyone should be carrying their own weight. That you have to rely on no one else but yourself to make it in this world. Toph Beifong, the greatest earthbender in the world.
People see me and think I'm weak. They want to take care of me. But I can take care of myself by myself.
At the climax of Avatar, when Aang is fighting the Fire Lord, the series could have taken the generic route of main character finishes training right before fighting the main bad guy route, but Avatar doesn't do this. Aang doesn't master all 4 elements. With the way the series was hyping up this confrontation, you would have thought so. However, Avatar subverts our expectations by flipping this notion on its head. Aang does eventually overpower the Fire Lord, but that's hardly the focus. Aang going into the Avatar state and defeating the Fire Lord is briefly foreshadowed in the beginning of Book 2 when the crew travels to the Earth Kingdom to find an earthbending teacher, but ultimately finds a man who wants to use Aang to unlock the Avatar state unnaturally. He starts by using a couple harmless supplements, but slowly progresses into more destructive means. The event played on the emotions and ideas we probably all felt watching the show. If Aang could consciously go into the Avatar state, he could probably defeat the Fire Lord right now. The sentiment rings true, but at what cost would he be able to do this? The method is valid, but self-destructive. However, with the deadline fast approaching, the characters began to feel urgent. At that point in the series, Aang could only reach the Avatar state when he feels intense loss or anger. Achieving the Avatar state in this way was a nihilistic approach. Hypocritical. They would be no better than the Fire Nation if they were to win like that. Destruction, pain, suffering, those were all ideas the group and most importantly Aang felt strongly against. An ideology the Fire Nation both physically and metaphorically represented. The group believed in peace and causing as little violence as possible. If they were to follow through with this plan, they would be going against everything they believe in. This is what made Jet so flawed. His deceitful, eradicative behavior was in direct conflict with his objective. He wanted to do anything he possibly could to completely eliminate the Fire Nation. He didn't care if he was hurting innocent people in the process. He embraced the very ideology that led to his parents' death. He failed to realize that in this case, the ends don't justify the means. Despite Jet being benevolent, he is a hypocrite, and was ultimately left to pay the price. Aang and the group recognize these flaws and subsequently don't fall victim to it.
It's easy to do nothing, but it's hard to forgive.
Sokka can often be pessimistic and rides the line between realism and heartlessness. Abrasive-natured. Similar to Katara in the sense that he would go to hell and back for the ones he cares about, but differentiates himself by not really caring for anyone else. Katara can be described as an idealist. Sokka counterbalances that by being a realist. I see him as sort of a middle ground between Toph and Katara, leaning slightly more towards Toph. He's most of the time sarcastic, but if he doesn't trust you, he can have a very aloof presence. Because of this, he has a lot of trouble accepting Fire Nation people. Perhaps the biggest growth and change in Sokka's character was during his participation in the 100-Year War when he was learning to accept people of the Fire Nation, learning that no nation was entirely good or bad, meaning he shouldn't blame people and based his judgment purely on where they come from. Sokka is initially the most reluctant in accepting Zuko into the group. Katara initially accepts Zuko as early as Book 2, but has her own reasons for not accepting him right away in Book 3. Generally speaking, we are the result of our environment and upbringing. When Aang goes to school, we find out that the Fire Nation people are no different than anyone else. Most of the kids are actually innocent and unaware of the horrors of war. They were just indoctrinated to the Fire Nation propaganda at a young age, and they don't know any better. But people can change. It takes Sokka a while to accept this.
I know how you must feel about my nephew, but believe me when I tell you there is good inside him.
Good inside him isn't enough. Why don't you come back when it's outside him too, okay?
This video merely scratches the surface for everything that I want to talk about with Avatar. This video is a subsection for a giant video I have planned for Avatar. Because I was talking about two vastly different themes and I had trouble connecting them together, I decided to split them into two videos. The video was initially called Realization and Ambiguity in Avatar: The Last Airbender. I talked about the ambiguity aspects, but not much about the realization and development the characters receive. With that being said, I hope you enjoyed the video. Stay tuned for the next part, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace. But I'm gonna be that guy who goes on a whim and says that Avatar is actually better than 90% of shonen anime. Talking primarily shonen battle anime. Before we get started, I want to preface that this isn't applicable to every single shonen battle anime. I'll mention the exceptions as we go on,